Hi, I'm Mark Sponsor, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, March 1st. Tonight we'll be discussing jet stream roller winds, surface level pressure, significant wave heights, and all the things that go into making surf in the North Pacific Ocean. Let's get to work. Looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean, we see an area of north winds off of California producing 15-foot seas or so. Another area, small area, 31-foot seas, just off the eastern Aleutians, not really doing much, all energy aimed at Canada. And other than that, a pretty placid pattern over the North Pacific Ocean. Let's start digging into the details. First off, let's take a look at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help to support the formation of gales, and when gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough that is a dip in the jet, and there's sort of one right there. So this is the international dateline right there. You can see the U.S. West Coast off here, and of course the Kuril Islands, Kamchatka, and Japan down in here. So we see winds pushing off Japan, not super tightly organized, not split though, and pretty weak in the 120 knot range in a couple of pockets, and a little helping support I won't even call it a trough, but sort of like a trough right on the date line. Anyway, when you have low pressure here, that forms a trough, and low pressure in the upper atmosphere often manifests itself down in lower levels of the atmosphere, and if it's strong enough, that of course helps create winds. If they're strong enough over a broad enough area, create seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, and assume the wind is aimed at you, turns into swell, and swell, when it hits your beach, turns into surf. All right, so we have a reasonably cohesive jet stream flow pushing off Japan, but you can see a massive split in the jet here, starting we'll say just east of the date line, with the northern branch pushing pretty hard right up into northern Canada here, and then the southern branch pushing just south of Hawaii and then into Baja. When you get this split pattern like this, typically you get high pressure set up in between. So we have high pressure here more than likely, and weak low pressure up in here. And that's not a particularly great pattern for storm production. Also notice a little bit of a backdoor trough that pushed off of California today. Now, it didn't really make any low pressure, but it did do just enough to lower pressure, and it pushed some moisture over the Sierra, and we'll get into that in a little bit when we get into the snow forecast. But in general, there's this dividing line. All the inclement weather's over here, and all the high and dry weather's over here. All right, let's put this into motion, see what the forecast gives us. As we get into Monday, pretty much the same pattern, but notice the jet splitting even more back at 160 east. I mean, look at this. We'll just do this because it's kind of amazing. Just you get into Monday morning and boom, the split just opens up even more. We get into Tuesday, the same sort of deal. We're looking for troughs. We don't see anything, so there's just all high pressure right in here. Now, there is some sense that you could get low pressure tracking with the northern branch of the jet stream into Canada, but that's not really doing anything to produce swell. Now, we see a little bit of a trough forecast off the Kuril Islands on, we'll call that Wednesday morning. Another little trough digging out Wednesday evening in the northern Gulf of Alaska. So finally, there's some hope there. The trough in the Gulf pushes into British Columbia areas. We get into Friday. The other trough pretty much just washes out. Then you get the sense that, maybe another trough will build off of British Columbia on Saturday. But notice the split, still holding pretty solid. Big ridge here. So there we go, your backdoor trough on Sunday. Again, maybe some low pressure off the coast. Here's another trough forecast a week out, Sunday night, a week from now. Maybe something over the dateline, the northern dateline. But you can see the jet really looking to split almost over the width of the Pacific. Just not a great pattern to support storm production. All right, let's go take a look down at the surface. Here we are, surface level pressure, surface level winds. As expected, there's a weak, very weak low pressure system on the dateline over the Aleutian Islands. And then high pressure, bulletproof, 1040 millibar high off of California, producing north winds. We know there's weak low pressure just inland here. Difference in pressure between the strong high and the weak low produces a gradient. North winds 30-35 knots off the California coast. Good for making wind swell, but also good for making a lot of wind. Not a whole lot of hope there. We're looking for something that actually looks like a swell producing bit of fetch. We see on Tuesday maybe a little fetch off of British Columbia with 30-35 knot winds. Of more interest, low off of Japan on Tuesday night, 40, maybe 45 knot winds. New low building in the Gulf of Alaska on Wednesday with 45 knot winds. Almost building to 50 knots and 55 knots as we get into Wednesday night. Taking aim on British Columbia. That looks like a pretty solid storm. And all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3 systems appear on the charts. Now, let's see if they really do anything. This guy, could push some north swell down into California. This system looking particularly weak, only 30 knot winds in its western quadrant aimed at either Hawaii or the U.S. West Coast. New system building off Japan on Thursday with 45 knot winds, offering some hope. As we get into Friday, the first two systems really settle down. The system off Japan continues lifting sort of off to the northeast. New little low builds on Saturday, supposedly, off of Northern California. We'll see if that happens. 30 knot winds. It's really sort of aimed at open ocean here, not really at California at all. We're into Sunday now. That low continues circulating off the coast, and we're into a week out, and just nothing really strong. Again, the issue is the jet stream being split, not having a lot of energy, not forming any real troughs, and therefore not supporting gale development. All right, so let's go take a look at the effect of those winds on the ocean surface. Here's significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean. We saw what was going on. As we get into Monday, yes, not strong north winds, 30 knots off of California, making 20-foot seas. Then mixed little pockets of fetch, but nothing particularly organized. We're into Tuesday, still looking for something. 20-foot seas off of north of British Columbia and pretty much out of the California swell window. System pushes off Japan. What is that, 28-foot seas, 29-foot seas, something like that. Another system building in the Gulf of Alaska as we get into Wednesday. And there we go, 28-foot seas into Wednesday night. And was at 24-foot seas approaching the dateline. So maybe some hope. Then seas up into the 34-foot range as we get into Thursday in the Gulf of Alaska. So some swell possible for the U.S. West Coast from that. Looking over to the west, though, we get into Friday. Another system pushing off Japan with 31-foot seas. Also fetch continuing off of the Pacific Northwest with 19, 20-foot seas. So some swell, but sort of smells of a bit of wind there, too. Put this into Saturday. We're looking a new system building off California. We know there's a low pressure system out there, 24-foot seas. So 25-foot seas. Okay. Aimed sort of more southeast, not really well at California. Maybe some sideband swell to result. And then here we are 180 hours out. Maybe even some background northeast swell for Hawaii with luck if there's enough northeasterly component to the fetch there. And that's kind of it for a week from now. Now, of interest, there was actually some southern hemi swell that showed up in Southern California this week. There's actually a secondary little pulse of swell. We're talking really small, maybe 2 feet at 15 seconds, coming in tonight and into tomorrow, that sort of thing. Nothing particularly huge. But looking at the models, another system is forecast developing on Monday in the Southeast Pacific with 33-foot seas. Max seas over the whole domain, 33.6 feet right there. Aimed reasonably well at California, probably better at Peru and Central America, and even up into Mexico. But assuming that to be true, then about a week later, swell should arrive in Southern California. So another pulse of southern hemi swell looks possible. But then looking at the models as we go out past that, we're looking for any system pushing off to the northeast. Now we see systems here, but they're all pushing. And also notice This is ice. There's literally no ice down in the southern hemi. As we know, as we get into the August time frame, September, the ice line pushes up almost to 60 south, so there's a lot of open ocean available. If we can get a gale or a storm down here pushing off to the northeast, our odds for swell are dramatically increased this time of year. Unfortunately, we're still in officially winter in the northern hemisphere, so we're just looking here for anything, and we're not really seeing it. So one system on the charts on Monday into Tuesday, offering some potential, mainly for, we'll call it, say, Southern California and points south of there. Taking a quick look at winds for the Hawaiian waters. There's Hawaii there. And U.S. West Coast. Dominating right now, 1040 millibar high. Winds flow clockwise around that with low pressure inland. Strong nuking winds in control of pretty much of nearshore waters. There we go. As of Sunday afternoon, early evening. And so winds rotate clockwise. Also, strong trades pushing into the Hawaiian Islands, 25 knots just off the islands there. So good for wind swell production, but not a whole lot else. Okay, we get into Monday morning, still strong north winds along the California coast. Pretty solid trades over the Hawaiian Islands. We get into Tuesday, trades back off a little bit as the high loses some of its punch down to 1036 millibars. So 20-knot trades pushing into Hawaii. Still 30-knot winds off of Northern California, but notice less nearshore, maybe like 10 knots for Central California. We get into Wednesday. As low pressure starts building up here, that should knock the wind out of the high pressure system. North wind still Wednesday morning in the 20-knot range over Cape Mendocino, Point Arena area, but pretty nice in Central California. Trades back off for Hawaii. We'll call it 15 knots. Here's our low pressure system off of British Columbia. Again, pretty light wind pattern as we get into Thursday morning for California. Trades, we'll call them 15 knots for Hawaii. Get into Friday, still light winds for California. Trades building 20 knots. Next high pressure starting to set up 1036 millibars. Get into Saturday. That high actually gets shunted off as low pressure builds off the U.S. West Coast. Northwest winds, 10 knots for California. Trades, 20 knots again for Hawaii. And into Sunday, now south winds, it looks like, all along the California coast. Maybe some hope for some rain. We'll find out in a minute as we take a look at that. Trades, here's that next high. Still blasting pretty good. Hawaii, 20 knots out of the east. And there we are into almost Monday morning. Sure would like to see the low move inland here to California to bring some precipitation. All right, the rainfall outlook for California. Here we are Sunday evening. Rain supposedly into Southern California. A little bit of snow in the mountains. So this is interesting. The models were predicting, multiple models, maybe 4 inches of snow for the Tahoe region starting today. As at sunrise at Squaw Valley, they had 8 inches and it pretty much snowed all day. Not sure how hard, but so the models kind of dropped the ball. We got a little bit more than expected, and that's really interesting because there was literally not a drop of rain along the coast. It was sort of this backdoor thing that just made snow literally in the Sierra, but no significant precipitation west of there. All right, so we get into Monday morning, rain filtering out for Southern California, snow gone for the Sierra, and then things are high and dry for California and the Sierra. But watch up in the Pacific Northwest, as has been the case this pretty much since January. The focus of all the activity is, well, certainly north of the Oregon line, but lately it's even been Washington and north of there, the British Columbia mountains, getting drilled pretty good, and another system queuing up, getting ready to drill them yet again as we get into Thursday and Friday. Maybe a hint of some rain for the California coast on Friday down into, I will say, all along the coast, mainly light rain, maybe a little bit of rain for the Sierra. Saturday, some snow, actually pretty heavy snow it looks like now, at least for a short duration on Saturday morning. And then another low winding up off the coast. Now the question is, will it push onshore? And the current projections say no onshore rainfall for, in the Central Valley or that, all of it staying off the coast. Would sure like to see that get nudged a little bit to the east. Snow dashboard for Squaw Valley. We'll call this 10 inches or so of snow. For the next system, what is that, about next weekend sometime? Snow levels, this is the base of Squaw here at about 6,200 feet. This is the summit up at top of Granite Chief or so. It's about 8,900 feet. Temperatures, if they're blue, that's below freezing. If it's even white, the gray is like sleet. So when the snow starts, temperatures should be freezing the whole way to the base, so that's good. But pretty warm during this week. So it's like turning spring, then back to winter, some snow, and then turning more spring-like. Winds, not bad. Even during the supposed snow event of a week from now, not bad winds at, what is that, 30 knots or something. Not a big deal. Kirkwood dashboard, a little bit better. We'll call it maybe 13 inches for next weekend. Same deal on temperature. This is the bottom. This is the top. Freezing the whole way from the ground on up. Winds, not bad. A little bit of wind before the snow starts, but then once it gets into it, it's fine. Then Mammoth, because they're further south, not as much, but perhaps a little bit more snow from this the current system. So we'll call it maybe 2 or 3 inches. Then another couple inches on top of them, maybe another 4 inches from the next system. Snow level, not an issue because the base of Mammoth is at 8,000 feet here. When the snow starts, you can see it's freezing to the base and below. Wind-wise, wind's not an issue. So maybe an opportunity next weekend. All right, let's go take a look long-term. What's going on with the Madden-Julian oscillation? That periodic weather oscillation, when in the active phase, it feeds energy into the jet stream, helps support storm formation. When in the active phase, it does the exact opposite, steals energy from the jet stream and causes it to split. Hey, kind of like what's going on now. And then, of course, even longer term, what is the potential for either El Nino or La Nina, not this winter, but next winter? We'll try to make our best guess after looking at all the evidence. So first up, let's look and see if there's any hope for the active phase of the MJO. That's what we want. Right now, we look at winds over the equatorial Pacific. Our first bit of evidence. East Pacific here, West Pacific here. The arrows are what we're looking at. They tell us this is 5-day average winds, what's actually happening. You can see in the East Pacific right now. Oh, and there's the equator right there. The date line's right there. You can see winds pretty hard out of the east, over the East Pacific to the Central Pacific to the date line, and then a little bit out of the west. Actual winds blowing out of the west over what we call the Kelvin wave generation area. This area in the far West Pacific from 135 east to just a little over the date line, 170 west, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. When you have the active phase of the MJO, and it's strong enough over this area, it produces west winds or west anomalies, and that takes warm water that's in this area, pushes it east, not on the equator, but under the equator, and it's called a Kelvin wave. That's why this is called the Kelvin wave generation area. When you get the west winds there, it can create a Kelvin wave if the winds blow west for 10 days and they're strong enough, something like that. That Kelvin wave will take 3 months to traverse the entire width of the Pacific, eventually erupting off the coast of Ecuador and creating a warm pocket there. If you have successive Kelvin waves of enough strength and enough duration, that can help form El Nino. So, not only are we interested in the Kelvin wave generation for its ability to pump energy into the jet stream and produce storms, but it also is the birthplace of El Nino. All right, so anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. Yeah, we have strong east winds. Are they stronger than normal? Just looking at the arrows, yeah, they're a little bit, the arrows are pushing a little out of the east. So we'll say these winds are a little bit stronger than normal, but nothing too obnoxious. Then you get over the Kelvin wave generation area. Yeah, we have west winds, and even the east winds that are there are weaker than normal. So you get this net overall effect of westerly winds. So it kind of almost looks like the active phase of the MJO is in control, but we need a little bit more than a couple of days worth of data. So what's the trend the past 5 days? All right, so here it is, 850 millibar vector wind anomalies. That's fancy words for saying what's the wind doing up at about 4,700 feet in the air, which is good enough for what's going on at the surface for our purposes. right? So there's South America, Central America, Mexico. The equator, 0 degrees, running right along there. Dateline right down the middle of the chart. There's Australia, New Guinea. You get it. Kelvin wave generation area from 170 west, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, to 135 east, so right in there. The oranges, and you can see the arrows if you look real close, they're out of the west. So westerly anomalies, but not particularly strong on the 24th of February. Even smaller area on the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th of February, but not easterly anomalies. So it sort of looks like the active phase of the MJO for the past 5 days or so, but very weak. So what's the forecast? All right, so you can see both the forecast and what's happened in the past. It's the whole planet on one chart. Scroll up here just a little bit. That's the date line right down the middle of the chart, okay? The Pacific Ocean starts at about 135 east, so right here, going the whole way to about 80 west. That's where Ecuador is. This is right on the equator, too. But the Kelvin wave generation area from here to about here. So you just draw a line right up those two spots in your mind's eye, all right? And then here is back in time. So if you see reds and oranges in this area, like right here, that's westerly anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area. You can see right here a pretty good, strong burst of that in mid-February. That was the active phase of the MJO. And then it's been steadily weakening, right? Here is today, very, very weak west anomalies with a little bit of east anomalies building in the far western Kelvin wave generation area. The forecast for the next week has, again, a continuation of these very weak westerly anomalies, but building east anomalies just east of the Kelvin wave generation area and weakening easterly anomalies over the western Kelvin wave generation area. So sort of a mixed bag. Probably not the active phase of the MJO, maybe even the inactive phase. Let's go look a little more. So another dimension of the MJO is cloud cover. If you have lack of cloud cover, you mean more sunlight reflectivity off the ocean surface, then that probably means high pressure, okay? And the Kelvin wave generation, well, here's South America, Central America, equator, right down the middle of the chart. There's New Guinea, Australia, you get it. Kelvin wave generation area right in here. We see that. That is positive anomalies, more sunlight reflectivity off the ocean surface. So probably the inactive phase of the MJO with the active phase sitting over the maritime continent, Indian Ocean. That's as of today. That's per the statistic model. It says pretty much the same 5 days from now. And then 6 to 10 days from now, the active phase starting to move into the Kelvin wave generation area with the inactive phase moving out and becoming more pronounced 2 weeks from now. So that looks good. The dynamic model, though, not as favorable. In fact, well, there we go. We can leave a little bit the final frame of the statistic model. Dynamic model says inactive phase in control, building 5 days from now, then starting to fade a little bit and fading out 2 weeks from now, but the active phase not moving to the west at all, just hanging over the maritime continent and weakening. So a little bit, here you go. There's the statistic model. Here's the dynamic model. The statistic model looking more favorable, but still not anything epic. Dynamic model, not as favorable. A little bit of disagreement on the two models 2 weeks out. Phase diagram charts, another way to sort of detect the strength of the active phase of the MJO. Right, so what's this all mean? This is the statistic model. This circle here, assume you're looking down on the North Pole of our planet, and that's like right in the center. The MJO travels around the planet from west to east. The active phase moves from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent, like Bali, then over the West Pacific, across the Pacific, under the United States on the equator, across the Atlantic on the equator, over North Africa back to the Indian Ocean. Where the heavy dot is where the active phase is, so it's in the, I'll call that the eastern Indian Ocean. The further away from the circle, the stronger it is. So a weak active phase in the East Indian Ocean. The forecast is any one of these three trails here, basically suggesting maybe moving to the maritime continent. One member says getting modestly strong, but nothing too particularly interesting. The other's just saying hanging right there. Dynamic model says, yeah, active phase, very weak, hanging right where it is now for the next 2 weeks and not going anywhere. That's not what we want to hear. Okay, the upper level model. This shows you areas favorable for precipitation. The greens are the areas favorable for precipitation, so one could say the active phase of the MJO. It suggests, and this runs about a week ahead what's going on at the surface. So this one says active phase in the Indian Ocean and inactive phase, for the most part, over the entire Pacific Ocean. That would make perfect sense, too. Oh, yeah, so there's South America, Central America, Equator, New Guinea. You get the idea here. So we looked at the jet stream charts. The jet stream is split, at the date line, and then it's supposed to go split even further off. That would make sense if you have an inactive phase in control of the entire Pacific Ocean. So we look and we go, yeah, okay, the inactive phase is supposed to fade some by about March 11th, but no real strong active phase behind it. I mean, if this is an active phase, this is the weakest looking active phase I've ever seen, probably just dead neutral. And then the inactive phase finally shows up in a real, another strong pulse of the inactive phase on, March 26th, continuing to the Central Pacific at the end of the model on April 10th. So what we have is inactive phase. This is supposedly your active phase, but it's very weak. Then the inactive phase takes over. To me, that smells like La Nina. When the active phases are strong and the inactive phases, when the inactive phases are strong and the active phases are weak, then that's a pattern favoring the inactive phase, and that's what La Nina is all about. Likewise, El Nino is the exact opposite. It's like you're always in an active phase of the MJO. The inactive phase completely disappears. So this appears to look like a La Nina pattern, at least for the moment. All right, let's go take a look at the CFS model. This goes out a month. All right, and you can see here, we can get there. There we go. All right, so past performance. So this is the same deal. All the Pacific Ocean, or the Kelvin wave generation from here to here, going straight up the chart. You can see in the past here, so the solid contours are the active phase. This is the inactive phase, but the reds are westerly anomalies. You just see a preponderance of westerly anomalies. Strong active phase occurred in mid-January. Another active phase with strong westerly anomalies in mid-February. Here we are today, and this dotted line is the inactive phase of the MJO. So it looks like the inactive phase is setting up in the Kelvin wave generation area today and forecast to hold through, maybe March 20th or so, with a pretty good bout of easterly anomalies in the eastern Kelvin wave generation area, with the active phase not returning till, we'll say, with meaningful westerly anomalies, probably not till March 20th. So we have 3 weeks pretty much of no substantial obvious indications of support for feeding the jet stream, which means the split jet stream pattern for another 3 weeks, according to this model. And then the longer run of the CFS model, the 3-month run. Now this is a little different. Kelvin wave generation area between here and here going up the chart, but past performances on the bottom, the forecast is in the top. You can see Kelvin wave, or probably active phase, the MJO Kelvin wave, in the Kelvin wave generation area, westerly wind burst in mid-January, the other one in mid-February. Here's where we are today. Looks like the inactive phase developing from now till about March 17th, and then boom, a big, strong burst of westerly winds is forecast. Now, we've been watching the model. This thing updates every day. Sometimes it's strong like this. Yesterday it wasn't, so it's coming and going. I mean, this is, again, a model trying to get a handle on what's going on in the atmosphere almost a month from now. So, we don't believe a model a week out, much less a month. But it's interesting, something to follow. Let's overlay the MJO. Here you go. So you can see this weak inactive phase, just like what we thought it was. And also notice that according to this model, we are in the active phase right now. But it's so weak, you can put a label on it, active, inactive. It doesn't matter. If it's so weak, it's like 6 of one, half dozen of another. You really need a strong active phase. It looks like it's supposed to happen starting about March 17th through April 10th, something like that. So this is something to look forward to. Maybe this would be our last big hurrah for jet stream energy and maybe storm development in that window. if it were to happen. And then right after that, you can see a 4 contour inactive phase setting up, westerly anomalies evaporating, and that would be the end of winter, and we'd be well into spring by then. And our guess for spring is, well, you can see it already. A lot of high pressure, abnormal high pressure, a lot of north winds, cooler than normal water temperatures. We expect more of the same the whole way till we get into sometime in late May, something like that. So just prepare for it mentally. All right, low pass filter. Here we go. Now, this guy's been playing the same game. Right now we have 2. So this solid contour, 2 lines, is a low pressure bias on the date line, which would sort of indicate, hey, maybe like a El Nino sort of pattern, but that's not the case at all. I mean, this year just hadn't been that way. It's not a super strong pattern. It's weak low pressure bias on the date line. Yesterday's run of the model had it completely dying out, somewhere in the March, early April time frame. Today, it's back, and it's been the same deal for a couple of weeks now. We've been watching this. One day it's here, next day it's gone. But no indication that, see the dotted contour? This is high pressure bias, and this is over the Indian Ocean. That is now expected to hold with east anomalies holding in the Indian Ocean. So it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, this looks like an El Nino pattern, but what it's actually acting like in reality is La Nina, weak La Nina. So the models have a real difficult time figuring out what's going on in the March, April, May timeframe. It's called the springtime unpredictability barrier. So I would bet we're not really going to know how all this plays out until it actually plays out. And by then, we'll know where we're at. But the hope is that the low pressure bias continues over the date line into next winter. But we have no sense that is anywhere near guaranteed. All right, so let's go look longer term. What's going on in the ocean? And that'll give us some sense of, are we in La Nina, El Nino, or somewhere in between? And where are we heading towards? All right, subsurface sea temperatures. Again, from the TAO buoy array, series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino. These are the anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are sensors on the anchor lines. The color is provided by modeling software that takes the temperature data, tries to fill in the gaps where there is no data, so we can get an idea of what the profile looks like. This is the West Pacific here. This is the East Pacific here. The reds are warm water. 30-degree isotherm, holding about like it was last week. 29-degree isotherm, also holding 173 west. The 28-degree isotherm, also holding stationary at 163 west. And the 24-degree isotherm, also holding, pushing into Ecuador. Okay, so actually pretty decent temperature pattern. Yeah, there's more warm water in the west, there always is, but there's also a fair amount of warm water pushing into Ecuador. In fact, looking at anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year, we see a Kelvin wave. It's been holding. It's actually kind of stationary. We think it's actually bleeding off to the east, but the bulk of it is stationary. The leading edge is at, what is this? That's 130 right there. So, right? Oh, no, 120, I'm sorry, is right there. So at about 132 west, that's where it was last week. So this isn't obviously moving, but then there's also been this persistent 1 degree centigrade warm pocket pushing into Ecuador as well. So we think, and this was up to almost 4 degrees at one point, so we think some of this is bleeding off and pushing into Ecuador, and so we have basically a pretty, a weak El Nino-ish looking pattern subsurface temperature-wise, and then we look at the MJO thing and we've got, well, sort of looks like El Nino, but not really. In fact, let's go look at another bit of data. Here, we'll just scroll right down. Here we go. This is another model's view of the temperature profile. It's showing things a little bit warmer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3-degree anomalies under the date line. Leading edge of the Kelvin wave at 120, roughly 120 west. And then here's that pocket pushing into Ecuador. So, this looking a little bit more favorable. So here's been the trend for the past year. West Pacific here, East Pacific here. The reds and oranges are warm temperatures. And you can see back in March 2018, Kelvin wave, what was this, number 4, I believe, pushing across the Pacific and into Ecuador. Kelvin waves 2 small Kelvin waves last summer, stalled, didn't have enough momentum, couldn't make it to Ecuador. And then Kelvin wave 5 in the fall time frame of 2019. Made it across the Pacific, not really strong. And then here we go, another, this stalled Kelvin wave pattern. You could see westerly wind bursts created warm anomalies under the date line. They tried to push east, and they just, yeah, it sort of did, sort of bled a little bit. And then here's yet another lobe and another burst of that, and it too trying to make it east, not quite making it. So what this suggests is, yes, we're having westerly anomalies. We're having the active phase of the MJO. Yes, it's trying to build Kelvin waves, but the Kelvin waves that it builds don't have enough momentum. They stall, they're weak, and no indications of building El Nino, but certainly no indications of La Nina either, at least in the ocean or from a Kelvin wave perspective or westerly wind burst perspective. Sea surface temperature, not subsurface, surface, what's going on? All right, so South America there, Central America there, oranges and yellow are warm anomalies, the equator right there. Okay, so you can see warm water off of Ecuador over the Galapagos, trying to make it a little bit west of there, but then pockets of cool water sort of break things up. We have this big cool pool off of South America, and now a developing cool pool off of California and Mexico. Of no big surprise, seeing how we've had strong high pressure producing north and northeast winds as the winds wrap around the high and then push easterly trades over the Hawaiian Islands. So causing upwelling, causing cool temperatures, and the same thing's going on here. High pressure rotates counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere, doing the exact same thing, creating upwelling and cooling off temperatures there. So from an atmospheric perspective, it kind of looks, the winds and high pressure are certainly looking like La Nina, but down in the ocean and Kelvin wave perspective, it looks like El Nino, so kind of a mixed bag. Sea surface temperature trend, we can see this is just the 5-day or 7-day trend. Temperatures warming a little bit off of Peru, so that's kind of good news. Also, a couple small, nice warm pockets off the Galapagos. So and there's no sense that La Nina is developing. We've been sort of saying we think we might move towards La Nina, but as of right now, we're not seeing any signs of it in the ocean, either subsurface, on the surface, but we do see that high pressure thing, and that's, again, it's this mixed bag. El Nino and the MJO, they're not just one thing. There's multiple dimensions. There's at least for El Nino, there's subsurface temperatures, there's surface temperatures, there's wind patterns, there's Kelvin wave generation, so all of it, you got to look at it in total. And right now, it's a decidedly mixed pattern. And then the quick overview, again, you see warm water trying to build along South America, Central America. If we were in El Nino, you'd want to see a big old anvil of red right here. We're not seeing that. But we're not seeing like blue everywhere either. When you get in La Nina, you'll see big pockets of blue here. In fact, so here's the strong El Nino from 97. As you see, big red anvil pushing into Ecuador. The very next year, you see La Nina, cool temperatures, here I'll pull away, over the equator, all right? And so we got this animation, it's posted on the site. That is La Nina if you ever want to see La Nina in 99, all right? And we can step through this. It's kind of interesting. So this is just the August and December data. So there's a weak El Nino. It sort of looks like where we are right now. Cool temperatures there, cool temperatures there. This is December 2006. And then the following year, it went into a La Nina and a stronger La Nina 2007. So you can pick through this. Oh, there's a little bit of an El Nino followed by La Nina. All right, we're not going to waste your time. You get the idea. Here's the sea surface temperature trend in the Nino 1.2 region. This is the area right off Peru and the Galapagos and Ecuador. Today at 6.616, or a little over half a degree above normal. And you can see the trend over the past several months. Temperature is basically hovering around neutral. This is a noise area, but it gives you a sense of when you have a lot of warmer than normal temperatures here, yeah, you might have El Nino, but it is also a good, use it as a precipitation index for California. And this sort of says normal precipitation. Well, we're not even there. So even the sea surface temperatures, though they're saying we're in a normal pattern in this region and we should have normal rainfall, we're not. Clearly, we're not. All right, in the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region, the message is even more mixed. Today, we're at 0.424 above normal and have been for, since January, 2 months. And even then, we were above normal, not a lot. And all this sort of says is you should be above normal precipitation. But again, we're not. We're clearly below normal. So there's more to the picture than just sea surface temperatures. So what does the atmosphere say is going on? All right, the Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. When you have lower than normal pressure in Tahiti over multiple months, that's always a sign of El Nino, and the index goes negative. The daily contribution today, minus 17.47. Looks pretty good, but it's only been that way for 2 days. Before that, it was positive. And you can see it's just been kind of bouncing all over the place. So sort of, we'll call it neutral. 30-day average filters out some of the noise. Today's value, minus 3.09. It was back in the, it's been hanging negative for, it was almost dead neutral there in February. So it's actually going more negative, suggesting this is the MJO indicator, suggesting maybe at best an extremely weak active phase of the MJO. The 90-day average, we use that for El Nino monitor. Today, minus 3.24, and has been hovering there. It was down to minus 4. You really want to see this down at minus 15 for El Nino. So clearly not El Nino, but if it was La Nina, this would be up at plus 10. We're nowhere near that either. So all this sort of says, hey, we're neutral too. We should be doing all right. But clearly we're not, at least from a rainfall perspective. And let's be honest, from a surf perspective, it's been a lousy winter. We've had 1 month in, January that was any good. And before that, we kept waiting for fall to start, and it never started. And already we're basically through winter. We're already starting to get southern hemi swells. And I'm personally still waiting for winter to start, and it really hasn't. So, at this point, I'd say it's not going to. So, a lackluster year for sure, but was it La Nina? No, not really. The official sea surface temperature forecast per the CFS version 2 model for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino sea surface monitoring region, temperatures have been above normal pretty much all winter. A quarter of a degree, what's that? There's the half degree mark, so a quarter of a degree to maybe half a degree. But this kind of has been overstating. It's really been hovering about a quarter degree the whole time. Anyway, the models show as we get into April, still holding, but then temperatures dropping, precipitously dropping to minus 1.5 degrees. If you're half a degree below normal for 5 consecutive months, that's considered La Nina. This is deep into La Nina territory according to this model. Last week we looked at all the other models, and they said this is sort of an outlier. Yeah, 2 or 3 of the models suggest La Nina, but a bunch of others say just holding around neutral. We're in the spring unpredictability barrier. Who knows what's really going to happen? The models just cannot get a handle to it, and they won't know probably till late in April, maybe even mid-May. So for now, we're taking this with a grain of salt, but in all, looking at things, a decidedly mixed pattern is in play. I mean, clearly there's warm water on the equator. Clearly there's Kelvin waves pushing under the equator, but they're weak. They don't have a lot of momentum. There are active phases of the MJO feeding them there. But the flip side is there's high pressure strong over the North Pacific, high pressure strong over the South Pacific and the East, causing upwelling in both locations, lack of rainfall, lack of surf, strong, the pattern has been strong split jet stream all winter, all suggesting La Nina. So we're very much in this mixed bag, neither one or the other sort of situation, and it just sort of smells like the atmosphere wants to go to La Nina. I don't know if we're going to go there or not. Some of the models say yes, some say no. We're going to say the long-term outlook right now is decidedly undecided, and we won't know. But clearly, no clear signs of El Nino coming, and if anything, I would say the balance of the evidence is pointing towards La Nina. All right, in the short term, at least there's some good news. There's a small storm forecast in the southern hemisphere, or even a gale, we'll call it. It'll make some small southern hemis swell about a week out. There is a series of small gales forecast in the North Pacific that will make some surf. Nothing great, nothing particularly focused anywhere. We have a lot of high pressure and a lot of wind and a lot of wind swell, and that sort of is probably going to be the trend for the next couple of months. So just prepare yourself. Get surf when you can, make the most of it, set your expectations extremely low, and don't get disappointed when even you don't get what you want, because it's just the way it is right now. You just have to make the best of it. All right, so if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Just click the button down below. You'll get notified via email. If not, go visit us on stormsurf.com. All the data you've seen tonight can be viewed there. You can follow along. Next week, we will not be doing a video. We're going to go chase some snow, but the week after that, we'll be back. And that's it for this week. So enjoy yourselves. Use the tools on Stormsurf. Keep up with what's going on, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.